Hi, and welcome to Book Chat with Julie. I'm Julie with the Argenta Library, part of the North Little Rock Library System, and here we are in a different setting. We're at the Argenta Library, sitting in my favorite spot in the stacks, because everybody knows I love to scour the stacks and find good books for you. Today is a special book chat for this month, and I have a special guest to introduce you to. This is my friend and author, my author friend, because everybody knows that I find authors like royalty. So this is Kathleen Fuller, and it wasn't really until my mom and I have read Kathleen's books for years. Some of these are mine, and she has the other big stack at home, and then the library is well suited with Kathleen's books. So please come in and get one. But I've read Kathleen for years, and I didn't really realize until the beginning of COVID, I was on a Facebook Live, that you were actually here, that you lived in Cabot. So she's from Arkansas. So welcome, Kathleen, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell you a little bit about who you are.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Kathleen Fuller, and I'm an author of Amish fiction and contemporary romance. I like to say if you like Hallmark movies, you'll like my contemporary books. I'm a native of Arkansas. I grew up in Little Rock. I married a guy from Bryant named James, and then we moved to Ohio, lived there for 23 years, and that's how I got started writing Amish. And then I think about 6 years ago, we moved back and moved to Cabot, and we've been here. And my youngest daughter lives here, and we have two other children. One is in Colorado. He's married. And actually, if you ever follow me on social media, my daughter-in-law, Sammy, does a great job with that. And then my other daughter, Sydney, she's in the military. She's in the Army, and she's stationed in Kuwait right now. And she's coming home in the end of September, so we're really excited.
Yay.
I'm just excited to be here. This is a beautiful library, y'all. It's gorgeous here.
So, well, thank you. I enjoy working here, and we've been at this location since 2014, and it's home to me. So it's where I spend all my time. So, Kathleen, what do you think that the large fascination with Amish, reading Amish, whether they're reading the Amish fiction, there's Amish nonfiction out there, there's Amish thrillers, there's Christian Amish, there's just any kind of setting. What do you think the fascination with us wanting to read Amish?
Well, that's a good question, and one I get a lot. And my first answer is because the Amish have what I think our society really needs and wants is community. They band together. They live in small areas called districts, and the families are close, the friends are close. And I think the more that our society gets separated from each other, even though we may be living in the same neighborhoods, but we're not feeling connected, that we crave that. There's also a component of nostalgia to it. It's a contemporary story, but yet because they drive horse and buggy and don't have electricity, so it kind of also makes people who are interested in history, or like that kind of ambiance type thing, makes them want to read the books. Those are just two. There's also quite a few others, but I really think that community and connection is the biggest one.
I think that's great. I mean, I know that's what I love about them. I was born in Amish country. I wasn't raised Amish. I was born in Tuscola, Illinois, and we lived in Arthur, Illinois, and that is a large Amish. My relatives all were friends with Amish, and so going back, and I grew up with a lot of Amish recipes, which are always
another thing. Yeah, I forgot about the food. How could I forget about the food? But
the noodles, homemade noodles on top of mashed potatoes. I can't pass that up.
Right.
So, and I know, I'll just say in a few of your books, in Love in Plain Sight, my favorite character is Catherine, and I love how some of her personal struggles were very relatable. And I know there's people out there that are like, oh, I don't, Amish books might be boring or they might be simple, but they're not. They're not. Trust me. There's greed, there's pride, there's love, there's rejection. what are some of the other words I can use in there? There's mystery, there's thrillers. I mean, you know, just because they might live differently than what you live, they still have the same struggles. And Catherine's struggles with some of her personal issues were very relatable to me, and I really appreciate your character Catherine in Love in Plain Sight.
Thank you.
So you have a new book coming out this week, or by the time that you watch this video, we will have already congratulated, because everybody knows that I like to congratulate and have big happy pub days, and so pub day would have already been here by the time you watch this. So get to the library, get to the bookstore, and it is called Sold on Love, and I'm gonna let Catherine talk about that book and the series. And
Okay, so Sold on Love, and this is the third book in the Maple Falls series. And Maple Falls is a fictional town set in Arkansas, and it's based on the Malvern Hot Springs area. And those of you who have read the first two books, Hooked on You and Much Ado About a Latte, you'll know some of the characters. And this is Harper and Rusty's story. And I have to say, so far, this has been my favorite book because I have two characters that are complete opposites for each other and to each other. And as a writer, that is the most exciting thing to write because it's a challenge and it's fun. Just trying to figure out how are you going to bring these people who would never even interact with each other, bring them together and have them fall in love and everything. And a lot of that happens when they have similar internal struggles going on. So just to get back to Love in Plain Sight, one of the things that I always try to do with my Amish fiction, and I do it with my contemporary fiction, is to show that we're all human. And so my characters, I try to have them as relatable and kind of a reflection of people, real people. And so that's the best way to bring the characters together, is to have them have an internal struggle that's similar. And so, yeah, it was really fun. Harper is a high fashion. She's all about the fashion. And she's so not me. Totally not me. But, and then Rusty's just a good old boy mechanic. She's a real estate agent. And, you know, he's just a really kind Southern gentleman under a rough exterior. So it's a little bit of My Fair Lady type, you know, Pygmalion thing going on there. And so, yeah, that comes out August 2nd, and I'm excited about it.
Well, and I'm excited to get to start my copy, to read that. So I always wonder sometimes with authors, you know, when you get a character and they're in there, they're in your head, is it easy to turn off and turn on? Or once the character gets in your head, you just have to write? And then what's your writing process as well? Are you pen to paper? Are you keyboard?
Okay, those are great questions. I will start with my process first, because that kind of dovetails into character writing. So on all of it. So when I started writing back in 2000, my kids were little. Like my youngest was she 3, I think? Yeah, she was almost 3, or just turned 3. So I had ballet lessons. I homeschooled my kids in early elementary and kindergarten. And so I, you know, had places to go. So I was always taking, like, you know, paper and pad. We didn't have the cell phones back then like we do now that you could type on. And so I used my laptop. Probably the past several years, I really write my books mostly on the computer in my office, because there's a gaming keyboard, and I have to tell you, those gaming keyboards, you can fly on those. So it really makes especially when I'm in flow, like the stories come in, the characters are speaking on the page and everything. So, but I will write anywhere with anything. I have done crayon on napkins before, so it just, I'm very fortunate that I don't have to have like everything be perfect and, you know, be in this certain place all the time to write. As far as the characters go, early on when I was writing, it was definitely one of those things that were always on my mind. I had to, you know, I have to get this down and everything. But I've been writing for 22 years now. So what I've learned to do is shut it off when I need to. The other thing too is writing in 2 different genres. you have to separate that. So when I'm working on, like right now, this book's coming out, I'm working on the 4th book in the series 2 to Tango. But I also worked this week on the proofreading pages of the Courtship Plan, which is my Amish book coming out next year. So it's like I'm working in 2 different genres at the same time in different processes with the story. So I've learned to shut that off. But I will say, if I'm on a roll, then like I can write for like 6-8 hours and that's not great on your back, by the way, sitting in the chair. But so yeah, and those are the really fun times with writing when you're not having to pull it out.
I always wondered if like you wake up in the middle of the night and go, Harper needs a blue dress and she needs to bake cookies, or then if you're the writers that write kind of the thriller mystery, I'm like, do they bake cookies to take to PTA, and then they come home and they start typing and they're like, and we slashed her throat, and I'm like, how do they turn it on and off like that?
I don't know. I don't have slashing throats in mine, but that would be a good question. I would like to know that, because so for me, have I ever gotten up in the middle of the night? Absolutely. It's just kind of crazy, especially if I'm at a point in a book where I've written myself in a corner, or I don't know what I'm doing with that character, because I do some plotting ahead of time. I do a lot of plotting in my head. But as far as I think I'm more considered, I don't know if you've heard, seat of the pants writing versus plotters. I would say I tend to be more of a seat of the pants. I used to always be a pantser, and then I learned it's way more, it's just easier, more efficient to at least have something down. So I've woken up in the middle of the night thinking about a book, going, oh wow, yeah, okay, that'll work. Or getting up first thing in the morning and going, oh, I've got to figure out what's going on with that person. So as far as shutting it off all the time, I can't. Sometimes it comes to me. And then, like going to the PTA and baking cookies, I might be there and I might come back with something because it solved a complete plot problem, which is very cool. So I guess it depends, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know as a reader, we get invested in the characters, and I wake up in the middle of the night going, I've got to wake up and I've got to keep reading, because, the characters get on our hearts and our minds just as well as they do yours.
Well, and as a reader myself, same thing, I've gone to bed, if you have, you're in the middle of a book and you just have to go to sleep because you got to get up in the morning, and then you wake up and you're just like, oh, I can't wait to find out what happens to so-and-so while you're brushing your teeth, So, yeah.
Right. And that's where I've gotten spoiled with audiobooks, because I can have my headphones, on while I'm doing chores, and I can keep that story going, and then I'll sit down and I'll find the chapter and I'll pick right up and I'll read the words, and then I put the audio back in. So... Well, I have one last question before we kind of wrap up this little book chat. What was the reading style that you grew up with? Did you come to the library as a little child? That was my first trip. I could walk to the library by myself. I had to cross the stoplight, but I was probably 2nd grade, and that was a huge milestone. And then I would take my books and I would go back home, and I'd read in the closet, because that was I had a book nook in my closet. But what was the influence that you had growing up with reading?
Well, I grew up in a house full of books. My dad is a bibliophile, as in storage sheds full of books. Nonfiction, no. He was a professor at UAMS. So he has a lot of science books, a lot of history. He never read fiction. And one of the things he liked to do is take us to the library. And I don't know when you moved here, but there used to be one on Louisiana Street that was the one that we went to downtown. And I think there might have been one branch out in West Little Rock, but that's all I knew of. And now they're everywhere, which is great. And I remember just, getting so excited to go to the library and to go up in the children's section. And because I was always a reader. I remember I didn't have a little nook, which would have been very nice, but I would just lay in my bed and just read. And probably one of my favorite days would be a rainy day, and I didn't have, I had my room halfway cleaned up enough to where my mom's like, okay, you can read. And I was always the kid, would read under the covers.
Yes, with a flashlight.
Yeah. And it was never punishment when the teacher said, okay, we're going to have free reading time.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep, so that was mine, and that continued on through. Now, college, I had to step back because, when you're in college, you're all consumed. And then I started picking reading back up when my kids were little, and that's actually when I got started. I was interested in writing. So,
Well, good. I hope that my love for reading, I've instilled that in my boys. I know Jacob, who is our video person on the other side of the camera. I think when he was in first or second grade, he asked for post notes for Christmas, and I'm like, why does he want post notes? But he was a reader, and so he would, read chapters and put the post-it notes and mark words that he didn't know, and he'd highlight them. And
oh, nice.
and then I would wake up at like 2 a.m. going, what is that light? And it was Jacob with a flashlight, reading as a young reader. Yeah. So, well, I have been very excited to have Kathleen here with us for this month's book chat with Julie. And if you would like to meet Kathleen, maybe you have some books of your own and you would like to have her sign them, you have questions, you've read some, please join us for a special book club on Thursday, September the 8th at 1 o'clock here at the Argenta Library. Kathleen's going to be here. She's going to talk more about her books, more about her new book. There'll be other things going on for that book chat. So please come and join us on Thursday, September 8th at 1 o'clock. Kathleen and I both have a mutual friend, somebody that I've introduced before on Book Chat, and that's Amy Clipston. And we want to say congratulations to Amy, because Amy also has a new book coming out this month, August 2nd, and it's Building a Future, and it's her second book in the Amish Legacy series. So please, that I love Amy and Kathleen and Shelley Shepherd Gray, and we've talked about Beverly Lewis on, Beverly Lewis I always view as, if you've read Amish fiction, you probably cut your teeth with Beverly Lewis and Wanda Brewstetter. That I feel like those are the first ones everybody always reads.
And
So congratulations, Amy. Kathleen,
congratulations
for her book. And we want to make sure that you join us again in September. We're going to look at some books on Be My Guest. Those are some thriller books that I'm going to introduce you to. And please come to Book Chat and Book Club here on September 8th at 1 o'clock. Join us. Kathleen will be here. Some of the other book clubbers will be here, and just get a sense of what book club is like here at the Argenta Library in North Little Rock, Arkansas. So thank you, Kathleen, for joining me for Book Chat, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Book Chat with Julie.